know about red flags in relationships, but there are red flags in D&D too. These are player behaviors that, you know, maybe you've experienced and maybe it worked out okay, but when they do crop up, it tends to be a very bad sign. The infinite backstory. So this is always a red flag to me when a player comes to a new campaign with like a 20+ page backstory. Now, okay, some people are just obsessive nerds and they let the autism flow out onto the page a little bit. That's fine. We love that. The problem is that dropping this much homework on a GM suggests that this is a player who isn't really thinking about their time. A good GM will want to know a player's backstory to incorporate it in their world, but GMing is time-consuming enough. They don't have enough time to soft review an unpublished novel. The other red flag is this indicates we're dealing with a player who is interested in dictating a story rather than collaborating to tell a tale. A backstory is a springboard for growth and social encounters. Any more than that, and you're veering into telling the story before the game is even started, which gives a little bit of main character syndrome. Phone addict. It's 2025, I get it, but heavy phone use is a major red flag at the D&D table. Now, to be fair, I once played in a multi-year campaign with a guy who was totally locked in, really funny, super engaged. And I only realized about 18 months in that he was playing League of Legends on the side every session. Some people can genuinely multitask and still focus like that. And sometimes you just gotta respond to a quick message. But generally, heavy phone use at D&D leads to players tuning out and missing stuff. That makes the game more boring for them because they're not involved, which in turn spirals because when you're bored, you're more likely to want to check your phone. Particularly for in-person games, where reading the room and interacting with fellow players is so important, generally staying off all tech is a good play. ChatGPT character creation. Here's a red flag that is pretty 2025 coded, but it's the ChatGPT backstory. Obviously, 99% of the time, if a player uses an LLM to write a character backstory, it's going to suck. Not because it was written by an LLM specifically, but because it wasn't written by them. And if your character is not someone that you can really relate to, that you really understand and are passionate about, that will echo across everything you do in the entire game. Plus, it's definitely a signal that they don't really care. Like, this is the first thing you do. This is pre-session 0, and you're already phoning it in. Also, God forbid anyone use AI to actually construct a character sheet and build, because I've seen those, and they do wild things, like telling you to take 3 bonus actions on a turn, which is, you know, very powerful, but not allowed in the rules. The Nepo baby backstory. Staying on the theme of backstories, this is one where the player constructs a background that is designed to give them mechanical advantages, rather than something they're interested in exploring. This is the character that comes from a long lineage of billionaire dragon hunters, bequeathed 2 billion gold and a +3 Vorpal sword. That's not to say such characters can't work. You can play a noble or someone very wealthy, but this is still a game which is built around limited access to resources, at least for the first 12 or so levels. Backstories really want to be a jumping off point for social encounters, both positive and negative, not a shortcut to +3 plate mail. Backstories are not for power games.
Hey dude, do you wanna go outside? Outside? Are you insane? The place where grizzly bears, great white sharks, and Prince Andrew live? You want to go there? Well, there's other stuff that happens outside. What? Like World War I? That happened outside largely, and it was bloody awful. No. But if we go out, we can go to Fan Fusion. Wait! That sounds awesome. What's that? Fan Fusion is one of the largest fan conventions in the southwest of the USA. Comics, cosplay, gaming, TTRPGs, fandom culture, and family-friendly experiences. Last year, they had over 131,000 attendees, and 2026 is looking even bigger with expanded experiences and programming. They've got a new Platinum VIP experience launching this year, and signature shows including Slam Fusion Wrestling, Arcade Oasis, and the TTRPG show Game Tabletopia. Plus, kids 12 and under attend free. Head to Fan Fusion 26 this year. Passes on sale now for the ultimate fandom culture experience. Link in bio.
Drunkardness. Your mileage might vary here, but this is a very simple red flag for me. I gather from stories I see online that some people like to get absolutely wasted while playing D&D as a group. Great, if that works for your table, but high-key, I have never had a game run by a drunk GM that was better than when they were sober. Same goes for other players. You absolutely can still play the game while drunk, but it's just never as good. If you want to play games and get wasted, I just don't think ttrpgs are very good for that. That's what Guitar Hero's for. Backseat Gaming. This can come in two forms. The most famous is rules lawyering or arguing with the GM. I'm not a rules-heavy GM. I run Rule of Cool constantly and often let things slide or change rules to keep the momentum of the game going or because it's fun. GMs might make rule tweaks for any number of reasons, and the Backseat Gamer takes any opportunity to argue about that. Usually, it's not even about making the game better. It's just about one person trying to prove to the rest of the group that they are smarter, that they know the game better. Now, sometimes a helpful reminder on the rules is really handy, and different GMs will have different levels of tolerance for that. But the other type of backseat gaming, which I have no tolerance for at all, is when one player tries to tell other players what to do on their turn. D&D is a game where everyone needs autonomy. Sure, you can discuss a plan as a group, but a player's turn is their turn. Players talking over each other or getting involved when it's not their turn really just slows the game down and makes the player whose turn it is feel, at the very least, browbeaten into submission. This is especially bad as it's usually the newest player who is maybe the least familiar with the game and the mechanics who gets bombarded. And how are they ever really gonna get into a game if they're basically not playing it? Player versus player. Any kind of player versus player is usually a red flag unless it's literally expressly the point of that session. This could be someone constantly picking fights within the party. It could be someone plotting to betray the party all along. Or it could be a more subtle screwing the party over by sabotaging social encounters because it's funny, or stealing from other players, or hoarding loot. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't keep secrets and you shouldn't have arguments in character. Both of those things can lead to spectacular gaming moments, but if someone comes to a session expressly looking to start fights within the group, that's definitely sus. No goal character. This is kind of the opposite of the infinite backstory, but the no goals character just doesn't have any motivation or reason to be on the adventure or potentially at the game table at all. This is someone who is very vacant or comes across dismissive or bored by the game, which is sometimes honestly unintentional. Some people are just naturally quieter or have resting bee face. It's not their fault. But sometimes it really is a downer on the entire session. Like if a player isn't really engaging with the game or the table, maybe they shouldn't play. No hate, but if that player isn't enjoying the game, they're only wasting their own time and bringing down the energy for everyone else. Not saying you have to be howling with glee 100% of the time, but a general lack of motivation and goals is seriously the quiet D&D killer. IRL Drama. This one's tough because TTRPGs are ultimately about friendship and hanging out, and a big part of that is being able to chat honestly with your friends. But there is a line when it comes to game night. If someone is consistently showing up really angry or upset or bringing in real life issues to the game, that's something to watch out for. Although TTRPGs can be very therapeutic, D&D is not therapy, and GMs are not therapists. I would never get over killing your player character if it turned out it was a manifestation of your childhood innocence. I'm not trying to make any supervillains out here. This can be tough because if a pal is going through some stuff, that social time is really important. But if this is happening in games, it's assigned to take it up outside the game, gently, in an environment that can be maybe a little more productive. Disrespecting boundaries. So this is common online, and I don't think it's because everyone out there is trying to be a jerk, but there is a very vocal minority who are clearly extremely upset by the idea that TTRPGs have gotten softer. Now, sensitivity isn't a negative trait, but truthfully, a lot of people are taught that it is, and they are terrified of being associated with it. Honestly, that's not really their fault. There's probably some childhood stuff going on there, but it does kind of suck for them, and it can suck for everyone else. To put it directly, it is a major red flag when someone is aggressively against respecting boundaries. This might look like someone being super anti any kind of session zero. Sure, maybe these players really are fine with anything at the table, but it is a red flag when they belittle or criticize other players who might not be the same. You are not a bad person or a bad player if there are genuinely some topics that you just do not want in the story you are a part of. So even if a player is fine with anything, being performatively vocal about hating session 0 or whatever safety tools someone might want to bring is a red flag for sure. Character ignorance. Okay, everyone starts somewhere, and TTRPGs are pretty complicated games as far as games go. It is totally normal and ordinary to ask for a little help or have to double check what a spell does or review your character sheet at the table. That said, everyone dies inside when someone who is 5 months into a campaign can't remember how to make an attack roll or what they add to their damage. At that point, it is slowing the game to a grind because a player hasn't learned their own character. It's kind of the opposite of the rules lawyer, and people will understand that new players take time to find their feet. But if this goes on for months and months, it's a red flag that that player really doesn't care about the game. TTRPG horror stories. This is a simple and admittedly kind of fun red flag, but just like it's iffy in a relationship if someone is constantly complaining about their ex, that player who shows up with a ton of horror stories about how every group they ever played with before turned out to be backstabbing traitors, it kind of makes you wonder, you know? Sure, a player might just have had a couple of unlucky experiences and left a couple of groups, and that might be interesting, but if it's happened again and again and again, it does feel like it might be a them problem. You know what I mean? Truancy. Life be crazy, and TTRPGs are supposed to be a fun thing you do on the side, not a horrific obligation. So, of course, we get it, sometimes life happens and a player can't make it to a session. But consistently missing games is a behavior that is at least a red flag. Now, I will say that if an expectation is set very early that this player is going to be in and out, and they're going to be kind of like a side character who tags along sometimes, I think that can work totally fine. But missing sessions where that player is supposed to be a core part of the group, especially if they don't give really any notice, that's tough. Not only does it make balancing combat encounters harder for newer GMs who aren't comfortable just winging it yet, it makes it really difficult to move the plot forward. How do you advance the story meaningfully if 25% of the party isn't there half the time? All the cool payoffs to a longer campaign, like callbacks and character growth and story progression, can be quietly killed by simple truancy. It also just takes a lot of wind out of everyone's sails to have people not show up. God help the GM who spent 6 hours prepping for a session when they're told that 2 players aren't coming. That's got to be devastating. Players who have such a busy schedule that they're often going to be in and out of games are usually best off playing in a series of rolling one-shots or Westmarch style campaigns instead. Unrealistic expectations. Okay, so this one is rough because the person hit the most by this red flag is the player themselves. Essentially, unrealistic expectations, or the critical role effect if you want to call it that, is someone who has seen a TTRPG and expects that experience in their own game. This is like seeing a model on Instagram with all the filters and the perfect lighting and using that as your beauty standard barometer for everyone else. It's just not realistic. Shows like Critical Role, Dimension 20, Legends of Adventurers, etc., they have some really great passionate audiences, and that's awesome, but they are performances. In many cases, these people are actors. I'm not saying it's fake, but they understand they are playing to an audience. I also know for a fact that a lot of professional pre-recorded live plays do retakes. They're not shy about this, you can ask them, but a lot of people who only watch don't know that. Contrast this with home games that are just a bunch of normies like you and me. The GM will typically have, at best, a couple of hours a week to prep. The players aren't actors or comedians, it's just gonna be different. Not necessarily worse, just different. Something probably a lot scrappier, a little slower paced, and definitely with a lot lower production value. That unrealistic expectation can truly rob the joy from a game though, because the player is comparing their game to something that doesn't really exist. Because apart from anything else, there's a big difference between watching a TTRPG and playing one. It's awesome to be inspired to play with friends, no matter where that inspiration comes from, but a player coming to a game with that very limited and narrow understanding of of what a TTRPG should be is a red flag, for the sake of their own enjoyment, if not for everyone else. My new Kickstarter goes live in 2 weeks, Mythozoology, on March 17th. Follow along now so you don't miss it when it launches, and you get the free Crystal Myth dice when you back as an early backer. Also check out the free D&D playtest material on the pre-launch page, link below. Also remember to like and subscribe, check out other videos on the channel, and yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you next time.